My name is Louise and I'm 52 years old. 28 years of marriage to Harold had taught me to trust his instincts, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened on that remote mountain trail in Montana. When our son Tyler called out of nowhere, inviting us on a family hiking trip after years of distance, I thought it was a miracle. Harold seemed excited too, though I caught him studying Tyler's voice during that phone call. Something in our son's tone didn't quite match his words about wanting to reconnect. But hope is a powerful thing, and I desperately wanted to believe this was our chance to rebuild what we'd lost. Little did I know that by the time we reached that isolated trail, our lives would depend on 3 simple words, Harold whispered to me in the darkness. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy real family stories that remind us how precious trust really is. And stay with me, because what unfolded on that mountain changed everything I thought I knew about the people closest to my heart. Harold and I met 30 years ago when we were both teaching at Lincoln Elementary School. He taught 5th grade math while I handled 3rd grade reading. We built a quiet, steady life together in our small ranch house in Colorado, saving every penny we could for retirement and Tyler's future. Harold always said we might not have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Tyler came along 2 years into our marriage, and he was our whole world. A bright, curious boy who loved building things with his hands and asking endless questions about how everything worked. Harold would spend hours in the garage with him, teaching him to use tools and fix things. I'd watch them through the kitchen window, my heart full of love for my 2 favorite people. But somewhere around Tyler's teenage years, things started shifting. He became obsessed with having more, wanting the designer clothes his classmates wore, complaining about our modest home and older car. We tried to teach him about gratitude and the value of hard work, but those lessons seemed to bounce right off him. College made things worse. Tyler chose an expensive private school for computer science, and we sacrificed everything to pay for it. Harold took a second job driving school buses in the evenings. I started tutoring kids on weekends. We ate pasta and canned soup most nights, but we never complained because we wanted Tyler to have opportunities we never had. After graduation, Tyler moved to Seattle for a tech job. The calls became shorter and less frequent. When he did call, it was usually to ask for money to help with his security deposit or car repairs, or some emergency that always seemed to happen right before we'd planned a small vacation for ourselves. Then 3 years ago, Tyler announced he was marrying Madison. We'd never met her, never even heard her name before that phone call. The wedding was in Hawaii with just a few of their friends. Too expensive for us to attend, Tyler said, but he'd send pictures. Madison came from money, that much was clear from her social media posts. Designer handbags, expensive restaurants, vacation photos from places I could only dream of visiting. Her family owned several businesses around Portland, and she'd never worked a day in her life. The few times we'd spoken to Madison on video calls, she'd barely acknowledged us. She'd answer Harold's questions with one-word responses while scrolling through her phone. When I'd ask about her family or interests, she'd suddenly need to leave for some appointment. Tyler's attitude toward us changed completely after the marriage. He stopped calling on our birthdays. Christmas gifts stopped coming. When Harold had his heart scare last year and spent 3 days in the hospital, Tyler didn't even call back when I left him a voicemail. So when my phone rang last month and Tyler's name appeared on the screen, I almost didn't answer. Harold was reading in his chair, and I held up the phone so he could see. "Maybe something's wrong," Harold said, setting down his book. Tyler's voice sounded strange, almost rehearsed. "Mom, hey, I know it's been too long since we talked. Madison and I have been thinking a lot about family lately, and we want to make things right." "Oh, Tyler, that means so much to hear you say that," I said, tears already forming. "We were thinking maybe you and Dad would like to come visit us. We've rented this amazing cabin in Montana for a week, right by some incredible hiking trails. It could be like the family camping trips we used to take when I was little." Harold was watching my face carefully, and I could see something shift in his expression. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Your father and I would love to spend time with you both." "Great. I'll text you the details. The cabin's pretty remote, which is perfect for unplugging and just focusing on family. No cell service, just us talking and reconnecting." After I hung up, Harold was quiet for a long moment. "What is it?" I asked. "Did he sound like Tyler to you?" I thought about it. "What do you mean?" "When's the last time Tyler mentioned those camping trips? He complained the entire time we were on them. Said the bugs were annoying and the food was gross." "People change, Harold. Maybe he's nostalgic now." But Harold's instincts were usually right, and a small knot formed in my stomach. 2 weeks later, we drove our old Honda up the winding mountain roads to meet them. The cabin was beautiful, but isolated, sitting at the end of a dirt road with no other houses visible. Tyler and Madison were already there when we arrived, standing on the porch like they were posing for a photo. Tyler hugged me, but it felt stiff, obligatory. Madison gave us a brief wave from several feet away, then immediately went back inside. "So great you could make it," Tyler said, but he was already looking past us toward our car. "How's the old Honda holding up?" "Still running strong," Harold replied, studying Tyler's face. That first evening over dinner, I tried to recapture some of the warmth I remembered from Tyler's childhood. I asked about his job, his friends, what he and Madison liked to do for fun. But his answers were vague, distracted. Madison barely spoke at all, just pushed her food around her plate and checked her phone constantly. "No signal up here," Tyler said, noticing me trying to check my messages. "It's perfect for really talking without distractions." But Madison seemed to have signal somehow, because her phone kept lighting up with notifications. The next morning started with Tyler knocking on our bedroom door at 6 a.m. Harold and I had barely slept, partly from the excitement of reconnecting with our son, partly from something we couldn't quite name that felt off about the whole situation. "Rise and shine," Tyler called through the door. "I want to get an early start on the trail today." Harold sat up slowly, rubbing his back. At 63, early mornings were harder than they used to be. "6 seems pretty early for a family hike," he murmured to me. "Maybe he's just excited," I whispered back, though my stomach felt uneasy. When we emerged from our room, Tyler and Madison were already dressed in expensive hiking gear. Madison wore brand new boots that probably cost more than Harold and I spent on groceries in a month. Tyler had a professional-looking backpack covered in reflective strips and carabiners. "Where exactly are we hiking?" Harold asked, lacing up his worn but reliable boots. "There's this amazing trail about an hour's drive from here. Really remote, but the views are supposed to be incredible." Tyler was avoiding eye contact, focusing intently on adjusting his pack straps. "How remote?" Harold pressed. Madison finally spoke up. "It's one of those places where you really feel alone with nature. No crowds, no noise from civilization." There was something in her tone that made my skin crawl. "Sounds lovely," I said, trying to stay positive. "Will there be places to rest? My knees aren't what they used to be." "Oh, sure, plenty of rocks to sit on," Madison said with what might have been a smirk. During the drive to the trailhead, I noticed Tyler kept checking his rearview mirror, even though we hadn't seen another car for 20 minutes. Madison was texting someone constantly, which seemed strange since Tyler had said there was no cell service. "Who are you texting, sweetheart?" I asked from the back seat. "Just work stuff, getting it handled before we're completely out of range," she replied without looking back. Harold reached over and squeezed my hand. When I looked at his face, I saw the same uneasiness I was feeling. The trailhead was nothing more than a small dirt parking area beside a wooden sign so weathered I could barely make out the trail name. 2 other cars were parked there, which should have been reassuring but somehow wasn't. "Looks like we're not the only ones with this idea," Harold observed. "Those cars have been here for days," Tyler said quickly. "Probably backpackers doing multi-day trips." How could he possibly know that Harold and I exchanged another glance? Tyler set a punishing pace from the start, practically marching up the steep incline, while Madison kept up effortlessly behind him. Harold and I struggled to match their speed, breathing hard within the first half-mile. "Tyler, honey, could we slow down just a bit?" I called out. "Sorry, Mom. It's just that we want to reach the good viewpoints before the weather turns." The sky was cloudless and beautiful, no sign of weather turning anywhere. As we climbed higher, I noticed Tyler was following a GPS device instead of the trail markers. Several times we veered off onto what looked like game paths rather than the maintained trail. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Harold asked during one of our brief water breaks. "Trust me, Dad, I've researched this extensively." But when had Tyler become a hiking expert? As far as I knew, the last time he'd voluntarily spent time outdoors was when he was 12. Madison hung back near Harold and me during one rest stop while Tyler scouted ahead. "You know," she said conversationally, "it must be really hard getting older. All the aches and pains worrying about money maintaining that big house when it's just the two of you." "We manage just fine," Harold replied evenly. "Oh, I'm sure you think you do. But Tyler and I worry about you both so much. Living alone, no family nearby to help if something happens." "Tyler could visit more often if he's worried," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Well, that's actually something we wanted to talk to you about this week. We've been looking into some really nice retirement communities, places where you'd have people your own age around activities planned for you, medical care right on site." My blood ran cold. "We're not ready for a retirement community, Madison. We're both healthy and happy in our own home." "Are you though, really?" Her smile never wavered, but her eyes were calculating. "That house is so much work for people your age. All those stairs, the big yard to maintain. And what if one of you falls? What if Harold has another heart episode?" Harold stood up abruptly. "I think that's enough discussion about our living arrangements." Tyler reappeared, then slightly out of breath. "Ready to keep going? We're almost to the best part." But we'd been climbing for 3 hours, and I had no idea how much further the best part could be. My legs were shaking, and Harold was favoring his left knee. "How much longer?" I asked. "Not far now," Tyler said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. As we continued deeper into the wilderness, I realized I hadn't seen another person on the trail for over an hour. The beautiful morning was starting to feel ominous. Harold stayed close beside me, and I could tell from his body language that all his alarm bells were ringing too. "Tyler," Harold said during what turned out to be our last rest break, "I think we should start heading back. Your mother's getting tired." "Just a little further, Dad. I promise it'll be worth it." But Tyler's promise felt hollow, and for the first time since becoming a parent, I was genuinely afraid of my own son. By the time Tyler finally stopped walking, we were so deep in the wilderness that I couldn't hear anything but wind and our own labored breathing. No distant traffic, no voices from other hikers, nothing that suggested civilization existed anywhere nearby. "Here we are," Tyler announced, spreading his arms wide at what appeared to be a small clearing surrounded by dense trees. I looked around, confused. There was no spectacular view he'd promised, no obvious reason to hike 4 hours to reach this particular spot. Just trees, rocks, and an unsettling sense of isolation. Harold was studying our surroundings with the careful attention he usually reserved for grading papers. I could see him mentally mapping our route, noting landmarks, calculating distances. "This is beautiful," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Should we eat lunch before heading back?" "Actually, we need to talk first," Madison said, and something in her tone made my stomach drop. Tyler pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment. "No signal, just like I thought." "I thought you said you'd research this trail," Harold said quietly. "How did you research it without being here before?" Tyler looked flustered. "Online, Dad. Websites, reviews, that kind of thing." "What's the name of the trail?" Harold pressed. It's called Pine Ridge Trail." Madison shot Tyler a sharp look. "I thought you said it was Elkhorn Trail." They stared at each other for a moment, both realizing their mistake. "Look," Madison said, dropping her fake friendliness like a mask. "We need to have a serious conversation about your future." "Our future," I repeated. "You're getting older. That's not your fault, it's just reality. But you're becoming a burden, and frankly, Tyler and I are tired of worrying about you." Harold stepped slightly in front of me, a protective gesture I'd seen him make countless times when he sensed danger to our family. "Nobody asked you to worry about us," he said evenly. "Didn't they?" Tyler suddenly found his voice, and it was harder than I'd ever heard it. Every time you call about Dad's heart problems, or Mom's knee acting up, or needing help with the computer, or asking if I can loan you money for car repairs, it's constant. "We've never asked you for money," I protested. "You're the one who's always asked us for help." That was different. I was building my career, investing in my future. You two are just declining. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This was my son, my baby, talking about Harold and me like we were damaged goods. Madison pulled out a folder from her backpack of all things. Who brings a folder on a hiking trip? We've found a lovely facility about an hour from Seattle. Very reasonable, all meals included, activities every day. You'd make new friends, have people to take care of you. "We don't need people to take care of us," Harold said, but his voice was tight with anger. "Harold, be realistic. You're 63 with a heart condition. Louise is 52 with arthritis in her knees. You live in a house that's too big for you in a town with no family nearby. What happens when one of you falls? What happens when you can't drive anymore?" "Those are our problems to solve when the time comes," I said. "No, they're not." Tyler's voice was getting louder, more aggressive. "Because when that time comes, you'll call me. You'll expect me to drop everything and come running. You'll expect Madison and me to uproot our lives to take care of you." "We would never expect that," Harold said. "Wouldn't you? You've been guilting me my whole life about family obligations, about taking care of each other, about how blood is thicker than water. Well, now I'm taking care of you. I'm making the hard decisions you're too stubborn to make yourselves." Madison opened the folder and pulled out several official-looking documents. "We've already put a deposit down at Sunset Manor. It's really lovely, much nicer than anything you could afford on your own." "How do you know what we can afford?" I asked. "Because I know what teachers make, Mom. Even after 30 years, it's not much. And I know Dad's pension isn't going to cover much beyond basic living expenses." Harold's face had gone very still, the way it did when he was truly angry. "You have no idea what our financial situation is, Tyler." "Don't I? You drive a 12-year-old Honda. You shop at discount grocery stores. You haven't taken a real vacation in years. You're barely scraping by, and it's only going to get worse as you get older and need more medical care." Madison spread more papers on a flat rock, weighing them down with stones. "The beautiful thing about Sunset Manor is that they take care of everything. You sign over your assets, and they handle all your care for the rest of your lives. No more worrying about money, no more burdening your family with decisions." "Sign over our assets." Harold's voice was dangerously quiet. "Just the house, really. And your savings accounts, retirement funds, that sort of thing. It's all handled very professionally." I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. "You want us to give you our house?" "Not us," Tyler said quickly. "The facility. It's all legitimate, all legal." "We're not giving anyone our house," Harold said. Madison's facade cracked a little more. "Then what's your plan, Harold? What happens when you can't maintain that property anymore? What happens when one of you needs full-time care? Do you expect Tyler to quit his job and become your caregiver?" "I expect Tyler to visit once in a while and call on Christmas," I said, my voice breaking. "That's all we've ever wanted." "Well, that's not enough anymore," Tyler snapped. "I have my own life to think about. Madison and I want to start a family. We want to travel, build our careers. We can't do that with two aging parents hanging around our necks like anchors." The words hit me like physical blows. Harold reached for my hand, and I clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "Your mother and I raised you with love and sacrifice," Harold said, his voice steady, despite the tremor I could feel in his hand. "We never asked for anything in return, except basic human decency." "Decency." Madison laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Is it decent to expect your children to put their lives on hold for your convenience? Is it decent to try to force your parents into a nursing home against their will?" Harold shot back. Tyler stepped closer, and for the first time in my life, I felt physically intimidated by my own son. He was bigger than Harold, younger, stronger. And there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. "This isn't a negotiation," Tyler said. "This is us telling you what's going to happen." What happened next unfolded so quickly that my mind struggled to process it. One moment we were standing in a circle, arguing about papers and retirement homes. The next moment, everything exploded into chaos. Harold stepped toward Tyler, not aggressively, just moving to get between our son and me. "You need to calm down and think about what you're saying." "Don't tell me what I need to do." Tyler shoved Harold hard in the chest. My husband stumbled backward, his hiking boots slipping on loose rocks. He caught himself before falling, but the violence of the gesture shocked me silent. "Tyler," I gasped. "What, Mom? You think I'm still your little boy who needs timeouts and stern talks? I'm a grown man, making a grown-up decision about two people who refuse to face reality." Madison was watching this escalate with a strange expression, like she was enjoying it. Maybe they need a demonstration of just how helpless they really are out here. "What does that mean?" Harold demanded. "It means you're 4 hours from your car in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service. It means if something happened to you out here, it might be days before anyone found you." Madison's voice was almost dreamy, like she was talking about something pleasant. Harold grabbed my arm. "Louise, we're leaving. Now." "No, you're not." Tyler moved to block the path we'd taken to reach this clearing. "You're going to sit down, listen to what we have to say, and sign these papers." "We're not signing anything," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Madison pulled out her phone again, and this time I could see she definitely had signal. "You know, it's funny how often elderly people have accidents during outdoor activities, especially when they overestimate their physical abilities." "Are you threatening us?" Harold's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm pointing out the obvious risks of bringing two people your age to such a remote location." Tyler was pacing now, agitated, running his hands through his hair. "This wasn't supposed to be complicated. You were supposed to see how isolated you are, how dependent on us you are, and just agree to the reasonable solution we've offered." "Reasonable?" I could hear my voice getting higher, more hysterical. "You want to steal our house and lock us away?" "We want to take care of you," Madison said, but her tone suggested the exact opposite. "Whether you want to be taken care of or not." Harold was scanning our surroundings again, and I could see him calculating something. The nearest tree line, the path back down the mountain, how quickly we could move if we needed to run. "Here's what's going to happen," Tyler said, pulling a pen from his pocket. "You're going to sign the admission papers for Sunset Manor. Today, right here. Then we're all going to hike back to the car's drive to the facility and get you settled in your new home." "And if we refuse?" Harold asked. Tyler and Madison exchanged a look that made my blood freeze. "Dad, you're 63 years old with a bad heart. Mom's 52 with bad knees. Accidents happen on mountain trails all the time. People lose their footing, fall down ravines, get lost in the woods." "You're talking about murdering your own parents," Harold said. "I'm talking about the unfortunate reality that elderly people often overestimate their abilities when they try to recapture their youth," Madison replied smoothly. Tyler pulled out a different folder, this one thick with what looked like legal documents. "Actually, there's something else we need to discuss while we're being completely honest with each other." My hands were shaking as I watched him spread more papers on the rock. "I've been doing some research into your financial situation. More research than you might think." Harold went very still. "What kind of research?" "The kind that involves knowing your social security numbers, your bank account information, your PIN numbers." Tyler's smile was cruel. "Amazing what you can find out when someone trusts you enough to list you as their emergency contact." "You've been accessing our accounts," I whispered. "I've been looking out for your interests, making sure you're not being taken advantage of by unscrupulous financial advisors or predatory lending schemes." "We don't have financial advisors," Harold said. "Exactly. You're managing $60,000 in savings and a retirement account worth another $120,000 with no professional guidance whatsoever, plus a house worth about $250,000. That's a lot of money for people with no investment experience." The fact that he knew our exact financial situation down to the dollar made me feel sick. Madison picked up the thread seamlessly. We've found some much better investment opportunities for those funds. Higher yield, better security, professional management. Investment opportunities that require transferring the money to accounts you control, Harold guessed. Investment opportunities that require trusting people who actually understand finance, Tyler shot back. Harold laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to steal our life savings and lock us in a nursing home. Just be honest about what you're doing, Tyler. I'm being completely honest. You're too old and too stupid to manage this much money responsibly. Madison and I are young, educated, and experienced with financial planning. We'll make sure these funds are properly invested and managed. For whose benefit? I asked. For everyone's benefit. You'll be taken care of in a nice facility. We'll make sure your money grows instead of just sitting in low-yield savings accounts. And when you're gone, there will actually be something left for the next generation, instead of it all being wasted on medical bills. The casual way he talked about us being gone like it was already decided made me dizzy with fear. Harold stepped toward Tyler again, and this time my son didn't just push him. Tyler grabbed Harold by the shoulders and shoved him hard toward a cluster of large rocks near the edge of the clearing. Don't touch me, old man! Harold's foot caught on a root, and he went down hard, his head striking one of the rocks with a sickening thud. Harold? I rushed toward him, but Madison grabbed my arm. Let go of me. Calm down, Louise. He's fine. Just a little bump. But Harold wasn't moving. He was lying on his side, one arm twisted beneath him, blood seeping from a cut on his forehead. I dropped to my knees beside him, and that's when I heard it. So quiet, I almost missed it. Don't move. Play dead. Trust me. His lips barely moved, and his eyes stayed closed, but I heard every word. My heart hammered against my ribs as Harold's whispered words sank in. Don't move. Play dead. Trust me. I forced myself to go completely limp beside him, letting out what I hoped sounded like a sob of despair rather than recognition. Harold's breathing was so shallow I could barely detect it, but his hand was warm when I touched it, searching for a pulse like any panicked wife would do. Oh God, Harold, please wake up, I cried, letting real tears come. They weren't hard to find. Tyler stood over us, breathing hard. Is he okay? Does he look okay? Madison snapped. You shoved a 63-year-old man into a pile of rocks. He's bleeding, I moaned, cradling Harold's head. There's so much blood. Tyler knelt down and pressed his fingers to Harold's neck, checking for a pulse. Harold had slowed his heartbeat somehow using techniques I didn't understand, but trusted completely. My husband had served 2 years in the Army before we met, and he'd mentioned survival training once or twice, though never in detail. I can barely feel anything, Tyler muttered. Madison knelt on Harold's other side and lifted his eyelid, checking his pupils. Tyler, I think you really hurt him. He's fine. People don't die from bumping their heads. People absolutely die from head injuries, especially elderly people with heart conditions, Madison hissed. Check his breathing. Tyler put his ear near Harold's mouth and nose. Harold had somehow managed to make his breathing almost imperceptible. After a long moment, Tyler sat back on his heels. I think he's gone. Gone! I shrieked, and this time my horror was completely genuine. Even knowing Harold was acting, hearing Tyler say those words nearly broke my heart. What do you mean, gone? Madison was feeling for Harold's pulse again, pressing hard on his wrist, then his neck. Tyler, he's not breathing. That's impossible. I barely pushed him. You shoved him into a rock pile. Madison's voice was rising toward panic. A sick old man, and you shoved him like he was some guy at a bar. But I didn't mean... I just wanted him to back off. I collapsed across Harold's chest, sobbing. Harold, please, please don't leave me. I can't do this without you. Through my tears, I felt Harold's hand move just slightly, squeezing mine, so briefly I almost missed it. He was telling me to keep going to sell the performance. We have to call someone, I cried. We have to get help. Maybe the paramedics can... With what? Madison demanded. You said yourself there's no cell service up here. Tyler was standing now, pacing in small circles, running his hands through his hair over and over. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't the plan. What plan? I looked up at them through my tears. Nothing. There was no plan. It was an accident. But Madison was staring at Tyler with an expression I couldn't read. Not grief or shock like you'd expect after a family tragedy. Something else. Something calculating. Actually, she said slowly, this might solve several problems at once. What are you talking about? Tyler stopped pacing. Think about it. Harold had a heart condition. He was overexerting himself on a difficult hike. It's completely believable that he had an episode and fell. Madison, what are you saying? I'm saying accidents happen on mountain trails all the time, especially to elderly people who overestimate their abilities. I stared at her, understanding flooding through me like ice water. You planned this. Both of you planned this. We didn't plan anything, Tyler said quickly. This was an accident. Then why did you bring legal documents on a hiking trip? I demanded. Why did you research our finances? Why did you choose a trail so remote that no one would hear us scream? Madison smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked completely genuine. Those are very good questions, Louise. Tyler was looking back and forth between us. Madison stopped talking. Why? She's not going anywhere. Look around Tyler. We're miles from the nearest road, miles from the nearest person. Even if Louise could hike back to the car by herself, which she can't, it would be hours before she could bring help. And by then what? By then it would be very clear that Harold died of natural causes, and Louise died trying to get help. 2 tragic accidents on the same day. Tyler went white. You're talking about killing my mother. I'm talking about accepting reality. We came up here to solve a problem. The problem was 2 elderly people who refused to cooperate with reasonable arrangements for their care. Now we have an opportunity to solve that problem permanently. I could barely breathe. My own son was standing there listening to his wife discuss murdering me like it was a business decision. Madison, we can't what? We can't take advantage of a situation that's already happened. Harold's already dead, Tyler. That part's done. The only question now is whether we're going to let Louise complicate things, or whether we're going to finish this cleanly. She's my mother. She's a witness. She knows we brought those papers up here. She knows we researched their finances. She knows this wasn't a spontaneous family bonding trip. Tyler looked down at Harold's motionless form, then at me. I saw something die in his eyes, some last vestige of the little boy I'd raised. How? He asked quietly. Same way. She tries to run for help, falls, hits her head. Or maybe her heart gives out from the stress and exertion. She's 52 and out of shape. It's completely believable. But we'll have to. This was your idea, Tyler. The hiking trip, the remote location, the papers. I just provided the financial research. They stared at each other for a long moment, and I realized they were actually considering it. My son and his wife were standing over what they thought was Harold's dead body, planning to kill me next. Okay, Tyler said finally. But we make it fast. I don't want her to suffer. Of course not. We're not monsters. I almost laughed at that. Not monsters. Just 2 people planning to murder an elderly woman for her savings account. Madison walked over to the rock where they'd spread their papers and began collecting them. We should probably move the bodies before we leave. Make it look like they were trying to hike back when the accidents happened. Bodies. Tyler's voice cracked on the word. Harold's body and Louise's body, Madison said patiently. We'll need to stage the scene properly. Tyler looked at me, and I saw him steeling himself for what he thought he needed to do. But before he could move, Madison spoke again. Actually, let's wait a minute. I want to check one more time that Harold's really gone. Sometimes people can appear dead after head trauma but still be conscious. She knelt down beside Harold again and pressed her ear to his chest, listening for a heartbeat. That's when Harold opened his eyes and spoke in a perfectly normal voice. Looking for something? The sound that came out of Madison was unlike anything I'd ever heard a human being make. She scrambled backwards so fast she tripped over her own feet and landed hard on her backpack. Tyler spun around his face, cycling through confusion, relief, and then something much darker, as he realized what Harold's sudden revival meant. "Dad, but we thought you were." Harold sat up slowly, wiping the blood from his forehead with his sleeve. "You thought I was dead. And instead of calling for help, you spent 10 minutes planning to murder my wife." "We weren't planning anything," Madison said, but her voice was shaky now. We were in shock. People say things they don't mean when they're in shock." Harold reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device I'd never seen before. "Really?" "Because I recorded the entire conversation." The color drained from Tyler's face. "You recorded us." "Digital voice recorder. Military-grade voice activated. I've been carrying it since you called about this trip because something felt wrong from the very beginning." Harold pressed a button, and suddenly our voices filled the clearing. Madison's voice clear as day. "I'm talking about accepting reality. We came up here to solve a problem. The problem was two elderly people who refused to cooperate with reasonable arrangements for their care. Now we have an opportunity to solve that problem permanently." "Turn it off," Tyler said. Harold pressed another button. Tyler's voice. "How?" Madison's response. "Same way. She tries to run for help, falls, hits her head." "Turn it off." Tyler lunged toward Harold, but my husband was ready for him. Despite being 63 and supposedly frail, Harold moved with the quick efficiency of someone who'd been trained to handle combat situations. He sidestepped Tyler's charge, grabbed our son's wrist, and twisted his arm behind his back in one fluid motion. Tyler cried out in pain and shock. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Preventing you from destroying evidence of conspiracy to commit murder," Harold replied calmly. Madison was on her feet now, looking around frantically like she was calculating escape routes. "This is insane. Harold, you can't seriously think Tyler and I were planning to hurt Louise." Harold pressed play again. Madison's voice. "We'll have to. This was your idea, Tyler. The hiking trip, the remote location, the papers." "Interesting definition of not planning to hurt Louise," I said, standing up and brushing dirt off my knees. Madison's mask finally slipped completely. "You manipulative bitch, you were awake the whole time." "I was, and I heard every word." Tyler was still struggling in Harold's grip. "Dad, let go of me. We can talk about this." "We are talking about it. The question is whether we're going to walk back to the cars together and drive straight to the police station, or whether I'm going to have to restrain you both until I can hike out and bring the authorities back." "You can't be serious about involving the police," Madison said. "We're family." Harold laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Family. You spent the last hour trying to steal our life savings and planning our murders. What exactly about that sounds like family to you?" Tyler had stopped struggling and was just hanging his head. "Dad, I never wanted it to go this far." "Then you shouldn't have let it start at all." Madison, however, wasn't giving up. "Look, maybe we got a little carried away. The stress of the situation, Harold's accident, it made us say things we didn't mean. But nobody actually got hurt." "Nobody got hurt." I stepped closer to her. "Madison, you and my son brought us to the middle of nowhere with fake legal documents, tried to coerce us into signing over our assets, and then planned to kill us when we refused. In what universe is that nobody got hurt?" "It was just talk. People say stupid things when they're panicked." Harold released Tyler, but kept the recorder ready in his other hand. "Tyler, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me honestly, what was the real purpose of this trip?" Tyler wouldn't meet his father's gaze. After a long moment, he spoke so quietly, I almost couldn't hear him. "We need money. I've been laid off for 6 months. Madison's family cut her off because of her spending. We owe money to people you don't want to owe money to. So you decided to rob your parents. We decided to make sure you were taken care of while solving our financial problems at the same time," Madison interjected. "Sunset Manor is a real place. The paperwork is legitimate. Except we never agreed to go there," I pointed out. You would have been happier there than you realize. Harold shook his head in disgust. And when we refused to sign your papers, Tyler finally looked up, and I saw my little boy again for just a moment, scared and ashamed. Madison said we had to do whatever was necessary. Madison said this was her idea. It was both our idea, Madison said quickly. Tyler's just trying to protect me. But Tyler was shaking his head. No, it wasn't. Mom, Dad, I swear to you, I never wanted anyone to get hurt. We just needed help, and Madison said this was the only way. So you've been planning this for weeks, months. Madison's been planning it. I just went along because I didn't know what else to do. Madison turned on Tyler like a snake. Don't you dare try to pin this all on me. You were the one who suggested using the hiking trip as cover. You were the one who chose this remote location. Because you told me to, Harold held up a hand. I don't care whose idea it was originally. You both participated. You both tried to rob us, and you both discussed murdering Louise when you thought I was dead. We were never going to actually do anything, Tyler said desperately. It was just talk. Just talk. Harold pressed play one more time. Tyler's voice filled the clearing. Okay, but we make it fast. I don't want her to suffer. Tyler closed his eyes, defeated. Madison made one last attempt. Harold, Louise, let's be rational about this. We're family. Families work things out privately. Nobody needs to involve police or lawyers or anyone else. Like how you worked things out privately when you thought Harold was dead, I asked. That was different. You thought I was dead, and instead of grieving or trying to get help, you immediately started planning to kill Louise and steal our money. What part of that sounds like family to you? Madison had no answer for that. Harold checked his watch. It's going to be dark in 3 hours. We need to start hiking back now if we want to reach the cars before nightfall. What happens when we get back? Tyler asked. We drive to the nearest police station, and you both turn yourselves in. And if we refuse? Harold held up the recorder. Then I give this to the authorities, along with all the fake legal documents you brought, and let them track you down. But I think that would go much worse for you than turning yourselves in voluntarily. Tyler and Madison exchanged a long look. I could see them having some kind of silent conversation, weighing their options. Finally, Tyler nodded. Okay, we'll go with you. Good choice, Harold said. But as we started gathering our things to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that Madison wasn't finished yet. She had the look of someone who was planning something, biding her time. I stayed close to Harold as we started the long hike back toward civilization, hoping we'd all make it there alive. The hike back down the mountain took nearly 5 hours, and every step felt like walking through a minefield. Madison and Tyler walked ahead of us, ostensibly to set the pace, but I noticed they kept whispering to each other when they thought Harold and I couldn't hear. Harold kept the recorder in his jacket pocket, but he'd also pulled out his phone and activated what looked like a backup recording app. Belt and suspenders, he murmured to me during one of our rest stops. If something happens to the first recording, we'll have a second one. What do you think they're planning? I whispered back. Nothing good. Madison's not the type to give up easily. He was right. About halfway down the mountain, Madison suddenly stopped walking. I need a break, she announced. My feet are killing me. We can rest for 10 minutes, Harold agreed, but I noticed he positioned himself where he could watch both Tyler and Madison simultaneously. Tyler sat down on a fallen log, but Madison wandered a few steps away, supposedly looking for a good rock to sit on. That's when I saw her bend down and pick up something from the ground. Madison, I called out. What did you find? Just a pretty rock, she said, slipping whatever it was into her pocket. But I'd seen enough to know it wasn't just a rock. It was about the size of a baseball with sharp edges, and she'd palmed it like someone who was planning to use it as a weapon. Harold had seen it too. When Madison rejoined our group, he casually moved so that he was between her and me. Ready to keep going? Tyler asked. Actually, before we do, I want to know something, Harold said. Madison, how long have you been planning this? Planning what? Don't play dumb. The whole elaborate scheme. The hiking trip, the legal documents, the financial research. How long has this been in the works? Madison shrugged. I don't know what you mean. Tyler, however, was starting to crack under the pressure. Madison, maybe we should just tell them. Tell them what? About the debts, about your family, about how we've been living off credit cards for 8 months. Harold and I exchanged a glance. This was news to us. Tyler, Madison warned. But Tyler kept talking like a dam had burst. We owe $40,000 on credit cards. Madison's family found out she'd been forging her father's signature on checks and cut her off completely. I lost my job in January, and we've been pretending nothing changed. Why didn't you just ask us for help? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Because you don't have that kind of money, Madison said bluntly. Teachers don't make enough to solve problems this big. But we could have helped somehow, I insisted. We could have talked to you about budgeting or finding new jobs or… Madison laughed a bitter sound. Budgeting, Louise, you shop at discount grocery stores and drive a 12-year-old car. What could you possibly teach me about money management? I could teach you not to spend money you don't have, Harold said dryly. Easy for you to say. You've never wanted anything more than your little house and your little life and your little savings account. Our little life kept us out of debt and gave us security, I pointed out. Your little life is pathetic, Madison snapped, and suddenly all her fake sweetness was gone completely. You're 52 years old, Louise, and what do you have to show for it? A house worth barely more than some people spend on cars. Savings that wouldn't cover a single year at a decent assisted living facility. A husband with a heart condition and no real health insurance. We have each other, I said quietly. How romantic. Too bad you can't pay bills with love. Tyler was staring at Madison like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Madison, stop. They're my parents. Your parents are the reason you're as pathetic as you are. Look at you, Tyler. 30 years old, and you've never taken a real risk, never demanded what you deserve, never fought for anything better than the mediocre life they modeled for you. Our life isn't mediocre, Harold said. Isn't it? You taught school for 30 years, saved pennies like a Depression-era grandma, and now you're looking at a retirement of clipping coupons and rationing medical care. Meanwhile, people with half your intelligence are living in mansions because they were smart enough to take what they wanted instead of waiting for permission. You mean people who were willing to steal and lie? I said. I mean people who understood that the world doesn't reward playing by rules written by people who want to keep you poor. Harold shook his head. Madison, you're 27 years old. You've never held a job, never paid your own bills, never faced real consequences for your choices. What makes you think you understand anything about how the world works? I understand that your generation hoarded wealth while mine got saddled with debt. I understand that you people bought houses for $30,000 and act like it's some great achievement when they're worth 10 times that now. I understand that you had opportunities we'll never get, and now you want to lecture us about responsibility. We didn't hoard anything, I said. We worked for everything we have. You worked for peanuts and called it virtue. There's a difference. Tyler stood up abruptly. Madison, that's enough. These are good people. They didn't deserve what we tried to do to them. Good people. Madison's voice was rising. Tyler, your father just spent 2 hours lying motionless on the ground recording our private conversation planning to destroy our lives. How is that good? Because we were planning to destroy theirs first, Tyler said quietly. Madison stared at him, and I saw something calculating shift behind her eyes. You're right, she said suddenly. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. Harold, Louise, I'm sorry. I've been stressed about our financial situation, and I haven't been thinking clearly. The rapid change in her tone set off every alarm bell I had. Thank you for apologizing, Harold said carefully. Of course, family is what matters most, right? Maybe we can all just forget this happened and figure out a way to help each other instead of hurting each other. She was edging closer to Harold as she spoke, and I realized she was trying to get within arm's reach of his jacket pocket where the recorder was. Madison, I said loudly, I think you should stay where you are. But it was too late. Madison lunged toward Harold, one hand going for his pocket, while the other swung the rock she'd picked up earlier toward his head. Harold caught her wrist, but the sudden movement made him lose his balance on the steep trail. Madison twisted away from him and made a grab for the recorder, but Tyler suddenly stepped between them. Madison, stop. Get out of my way, Tyler. No, this is insane. These are my parents. Madison swung the rock toward Tyler instead, catching him on the shoulder. He cried out and stumbled, and for a moment all four of us were tangled together on the narrow trail. That's when Harold made his move. Instead of trying to fight Madison for the recorder, he pulled out his phone and hit a button. Suddenly, our voices were broadcasting from the phone's speaker crystal clear in the mountain air. I'm talking about accepting reality, Madison's recorded voice announced. We came up here to solve a problem. The problem was two elderly people who refused to cooperate with reasonable arrangements for their care. Madison froze, staring at the phone in Harold's hand. Cloud backup, Harold said calmly. The recording uploaded automatically whenever we had cell signal. Even if you destroy this phone and the recorder, there are copies on multiple servers. Madison's face crumpled, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked her age. Just a 27-year-old woman who'd gotten in way over her head. Tyler sat down heavily on the trail, holding his shoulder where the rock had hit him. It's over, isn't it? Yes, Harold said. It's over. By the time we reached our cars, it was nearly dark, and Tyler could barely lift his right arm. The combination of Madison's attack and the long hike had aggravated whatever injury she'd caused with that rock. We need to get Tyler to a hospital, I said, despite everything that had happened. He was still my son, and he was hurt. After we go to the police, Harold said firmly. Harold, look at him. He's in pain. And whose fault is that? But Harold's voice softened when he looked at Tyler's pale, sweating face. Fine. Hospital first. But Madison rides with us, and you ride with them. I'm not giving anyone a chance to run. Madison had been silent since Harold revealed the cloud backup, but now she spoke up. I'm not running. Where would I go? Your family has money, I pointed out. You could disappear pretty easily with the right resources. My family disowned me. Remember, I have about $40 in my checking account, and a credit score that would make a teenager laugh. Tyler looked up from where he was leaning against his car. Madison, why did you really target my parents? What do you mean? I mean, if you were smart enough to research their finances and plan this whole elaborate scheme, you were smart enough to know that $300,000 wouldn't solve our problems long term. So why them? Why not someone richer? Madison was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she spoke without looking at any of us. Because they were easy. Old, trusting, isolated from other family members. Because Tyler had keys to their house and access to their personal information. Because they loved you enough to come on a hiking trip even when something felt wrong about it. You picked them because they were vulnerable, Harold said. I picked them because they were available. Tyler never stopped talking about how guilty he felt that his parents were getting older and he wasn't doing more to help them. It was like he was already primed to think of you as a burden. Tyler flinched like she'd slapped him. And honestly, I thought you'd be grateful in the end. A nice, clean facility, all your needs taken care of, no more worrying about money or maintaining a house or any of the things that stress elderly people out. I thought we were offering you a better life. By forging our signatures and stealing our assets, I said. By managing resources you weren't using efficiently anyway. Harold shook his head. Madison, do you even hear yourself? You're talking about us like we're children who can't make our own decisions. Most people your age can't. The number of elderly people who fall victim to financial scams or make terrible decisions about their care because they're too proud to accept help is staggering. So you decided to scam us first for our own good. I decided to make sure you were taken care of while also solving Tyler's financial problems. It seemed like a win-win situation. Except for the part where we didn't consent to any of it. Madison shrugged. People rarely consent to things that are good for them, but require giving up control. The casual way she dismissed our autonomy was somehow more chilling than her earlier threats of violence. Harold pulled out his phone to call 911, but Tyler stopped him. "Dad, before you do that, I need to say something." "Tyler, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Tyler straightened up, wincing from the pain in his shoulder. "Mom, Dad, I want you to know that everything Madison said about me feeling guilty about thinking of you as a burden that wasn't true. I never thought of you that way." "Then why did you go along with this?" I asked. Tyler was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Because I was scared. We were so deep in debt and people were threatening us. Madison said her way was the only way to fix everything quickly." "What kind of threats?" Harold asked. "The kind where they know where you live and work. The kind where they mention that accidents happen to people who don't pay their debts." Harold's expression shifted from anger to concern. "Tyler, how much trouble are you actually in?" "More than $40,000, Tyler admitted. "That's just the credit cards. There's other money borrowed from other people." "How much other money?" "About 60,000 more." Harold and I stared at each other. $100,000 in debt was far beyond anything we could help with, even if we'd wanted to. "Who did you borrow from?" Harold asked. "People you don't want to know about. Madison said her plan would let us pay everyone back and start fresh." "By destroying our lives," I said. "By finding a solution where everyone got what they needed," Madison corrected. "You got professional care. Tyler got financial stability. I got a husband who wasn't stressed and terrified every day." "And you got our house and savings," Harold pointed out, "which would have gone to Tyler eventually anyway. We just moved up the timeline." Harold held up a hand. "Enough. Tyler, I'm calling for an ambulance and the police. What you do after that is up to you, but this conversation is over." As Harold dialed, Tyler reached out and touched my arm. "Mom, I know you probably can't forgive me, but I want you to know I love you. I've always loved you. I got lost somewhere along the way." Looking at my son, injured and scared, and facing the consequences of choices that would change his life forever, I felt my heart breaking. "I love you too, Tyler. That's never going to change. But love isn't enough to fix this." "I know," he whispered. As we waited for the ambulance and police to arrive, I thought about all the times I'd worried about Tyler growing up. Would he make good grades? Would he find friends? Would he be happy? It had never occurred to me to worry about whether he'd try to kill me for money. But maybe that's what being a parent really means. You prepare for the dangers you can imagine, and then life shows you the ones you never saw coming. The emergency room at Valley General was busy for a Thursday night, but Tyler's shoulder injury moved us to the front of the line. While the doctors examined him, Harold and I sat in a consultation room with Detective Sarah Rodriguez, going through everything that had happened. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," Detective Rodriguez said, reviewing her notes. "Your son and daughter-in-law lured you to a remote location under the pretense of a family reconciliation trip, attempted to coerce you into signing legal documents that would have given them control of your assets, and when you refused, they discussed killing you both." "That's correct," Harold confirmed. "And you recorded these conversations?" "I did." Harold handed over both the digital recorder and his phone. "The phone has backup copies stored in cloud services." Detective Rodriguez listened to key portions of the recordings, her expression growing more serious with each damning statement. "Mrs. Patterson, did you feel your life was in immediate danger?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "When they thought Harold was dead, they spent several minutes planning exactly how to kill me and make it look like an accident." "And Mr. Patterson, you intentionally feigned death in order to record their unguarded reactions." "I did. When Tyler shoved me and I hit my head, I realized they were more dangerous than I'd thought. Playing dead seemed like the best way to find out what their real intentions were." Detective Rodriguez nodded. "That was quick thinking. These recordings are definitely admissible evidence, and the statements on them support charges of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted fraud, and elder abuse." "What happens to Tyler?" I asked. That depends on several factors: his cooperation with the investigation, his role versus Madison's role, whether he's willing to testify against her. But Mrs. Patterson, I need you to understand that your son participated in a serious crime. Even if he was influenced by his wife, even if he ultimately didn't go through with violence, he still conspired to defraud you and discussed your murder. There will be consequences. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. I understand. What about the financial crimes? Harold asked. Tyler mentioned accessing our bank accounts and personal information. We'll investigate all of that. If they've already stolen money or opened accounts in your names, we'll work with the banks to reverse those transactions. You should also contact your banks tomorrow and put fraud alerts on all your accounts. A nurse knocked on the door. Excuse me, Tyler Patterson is asking to see his parents before he's transferred to booking. Detective Rodriguez looked at us. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. We want to, I said, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. Tyler was in a bed in the trauma bay, his right arm in a sling. Madison sat in a chair beside him, handcuffed to the bed rail. She looked up when we walked in, but didn't say anything. How's your shoulder? I asked Tyler. Dislocated, but they put it back in place. Mom, Dad, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I want you to know something. What's that? When Madison was talking about hurting you when she hit me with that rock, something cleared up in my head. I realized I'd rather go to prison than let anything happen to you. That's something, I guess, Harold said. I know it's not enough. I know saying I'm sorry doesn't undo what we did. But I want you to know that I understand now why what we planned was so wrong. Not just illegal, but wrong. You raised me to be better than that. Yes, we did, I said quietly. Madison spoke for the first time since we'd entered the room. Tyler, you don't need to keep apologizing to them. We made a calculated decision based on the information available to us. Madison, stop, Tyler said. Just stop. Stop what? Stop being realistic. Stop refusing to grovel to people who never would have helped us anyway. Harold stepped closer to her chair. Madison, you tried to murder my wife. You planned it, discussed it, and would have carried it out if you'd had the opportunity. I don't want to hear your justifications. And I don't want to hear your self-righteous lectures. You people act like your little hoard of money makes you morally superior, but you were perfectly willing to let your own son face violent consequences rather than share any of it. We didn't know Tyler was in danger, I protested, because you didn't care enough to ask. When's the last time either of you called Tyler just to see how he was doing? When's the last time you visited or invited us to visit you? Her words stung, because they contained a grain of truth. Harold and I had been hurt by Tyler's distance after his marriage, and we'd responded by maintaining our own distance. You're right that we could have done more to stay connected, I admitted. But that doesn't justify what you did. Doesn't it? You had $300,000 sitting in savings accounts earning basically nothing while your son was drowning in debt. You could have helped, but you chose not to. We chose not to help someone who never asked for help, and who made it clear our company wasn't welcome, Harold said. So you admit you wouldn't have helped? Harold considered the question. If Tyler had come to us, honestly explained his situation, and asked for help, we would have done whatever we could. We might not have been able to solve all his problems, but we would have tried. Even if it meant using your precious savings. Even then. Madison stared at him, and for the first time, I saw doubt flicker across her face. Tyler spoke up from the bed. Madison, they would have helped. I know them. If I'd been honest about what was happening, they would have found a way. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because they're good people, and good people help their children when they're in trouble. Then why didn't you ask them? Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want them to know I'd failed so completely. Because it was easier to let you convince me they were the problem instead of admitting I was. Detective Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, we're ready to transport the suspects. If you have anything else you want to say, now would be the time. I looked at Tyler, my son, my baby, who was about to be arrested for trying to rob and kill his own parents. Tyler, I want you to get help. Real help. Not just for the financial problems, but for whatever made you think this was acceptable. I will, Mom. I promise. And I want you to know that when you get out of prison, if you're genuinely sorry and genuinely changed, our door will be open. It might take time for us to trust you again, but the door will be open. Tyler started crying, then deep sobs that shook his whole body. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But that's what love means. Madison made a disgusted sound. This is pathetic. Tyler, you're going to prison for years. These people aren't going to be waiting for you when you get out. Maybe not, I said. But we're going to try. Harold put his arm around my shoulders. That's all we can promise. That we're going to try. As the officers led Tyler and Madison away, I thought about all the ways this story could have ended. With Harold and me dead on a mountain trail, with our life savings stolen and our son disappearing into a life of crime, with our bodies never found and Tyler and Madison collecting life insurance money. Instead, it ended with truth consequences and the slim possibility of redemption. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for. From the time this all started until the trials concluded, 18 months passed. Tyler pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and testified against Madison in exchange for a lighter sentence. He got 4 years in minimum security prison. Madison, who refused to show any remorse and continued to insist she'd done nothing wrong, got 12 years. Harold and I moved to a smaller house closer to town, partly for practical reasons, partly because our old house held too many painful memories. We started seeing a counselor to help us process what had happened and figure out how to rebuild our relationship with Tyler. He writes to us every month from prison. His letters are different from anything I remember him writing before, honest about his mistakes, and focused on making amends rather than making excuses. Harold and I write back carefully but consistently. We don't know if Tyler will really be changed when he gets out. We don't know if our family can ever be whole again. But we know that love doesn't mean pretending terrible things didn't happen. It means choosing to keep trying even when trying hurts. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay still. Listen carefully, and then decide what kind of person you want to be when the crisis passes. Harold's whispered words saved our lives that day, but they also taught me something deeper. Sometimes not moving, not reacting, not rushing to fix things is exactly what the situation requires. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait, watch, and let the truth reveal itself. Have any of you ever faced a situation where family members betrayed your trust in ways you never saw coming? How did you handle the balance between love and boundaries, between forgiveness and accountability? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family trust and finding strength in the most unexpected places. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's possible to love someone while still protecting yourself from them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your safety and well-being matter even when the threat comes from people who should love you most. Take care of yourselves and trust your instincts. They might just save your life.